Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome. So glad that you're here. Before we begin, I would love for you to say hello in the comments. Tell me where you're joining us from and what area of nursing that you're in. And if this is your first real shift masterclass, or if you've been with us over the last few weeks, I really love seeing just how many different corners of the corners of the world and the nursing profession that come together for these conversations. I will just share my screen because we have something. I have presented a PowerPoint for you guys. And of course, this one here. And the tech issues always continue. But that's okay. It just means that I am human and yeah. Okay. So I believe that you can see all that now. Okay. So before we get started, and now the dog wants to play up. It's going to be one of those days, guys. I think this is our masterclass is just not going to go, but that's okay. We're going to kick on and we'll go. We'll make a start. So I want to ask you, how many conversations have you won after they were over? You know, the ones in the car on the way home, in the shower at midnight, at 3 a.m. when the shift has ended, but the mind hasn't. The perfectly worded, completely calm, entirely reasonable conversation that you've had a response for and you had ready, the thing that you should have said, and the truth is swallowed because the moment passed, okay? Or because the risk felt too high, or you simply didn't trust the words that you would receive the way you needed them to be. Most nurses can answer that with a number, and the number's not small, let me tell you. I think most of us would have had this for years, thousands and thousands of conversations. I used to win every conversation, okay, and every argument. I was brilliant in the car. I was clear, I was articulated, exactly right, and completely silent in the moment that mattered. Let me ask you another question, okay? Have you ever stopped to wonder why? Because for years I thought it was a confidence problem. I thought I just needed to be more assertive, better at difficult conversations, less emotional, more confident. But after 16 years of working in emergency, and after working with so many incredible women, I don't believe that is the real problem anymore. I don't think nurses stay quiet because they don't have anything to say. I think many of us have learned that silence was safer than honesty. And those are two very different things. So today I want to explore something that completely changed the way I understand myself. And it's the reason why I called today's masterclass, Your Voice Was Never the Problem. Because if you've ever driven home replaying a conversation, if you've ever thought of the perfect response 3 hours too late, if you've ever stayed quiet when every part of you wanted to speak, I want you to know something before we go any further. There is nothing wrong with you. Today isn't about teaching you to become louder. It is about helping you understand why your voice became quiet in the first place. And once you understand that, everything begins to make sense. But before we do that, I want to share with you a story of when I went for a job interview as a clinical nurse. So it was in a bigger emergency department than I had ever worked in. I was probably about 5 years. Yeah, 2015 it was, 5 years into my nursing career. And I was confident. I prepared well. I got some guidance. I got some coaching beforehand. I had all my notes, had a little notebook with all my different scenarios, everything in it, what I would do, escalation, all of that. It was all there. Had my 10 minutes to pursue 10 minutes to go through the questions. I wrote down all the things there. And I thought, okay, I've got this. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm saying. I can do this with my eyes closed. And I walked into this room. Now, the moment I walked into that room, my confidence went through the floor. I was intimidated. I got hot. I got sweaty. And I just thought, holy crap, what the hell am I doing here? Has this ever happened to you? Now, in my years of being on both sides, okay, this is the first and last time this has ever happened to me in a job interview, but I have seen it many, many times on the other side in recruitment. And so I went in, and as you know, most nursing interviews that you go into, there's probably 2 or 3 people there, recruiters there. So I went in. There was a gentleman up the back, and he was leaned back. He's like, he didn't want to be there, but he was leaned back. He had his legs crossed. He's resting his head on his elbow, like his elbow on the thing. Then I had 2 other nurses, one on the right-hand side of me and one on the left. So if they weren't up the front, it was just around the table. And we got to the first question. Okay. And mind you, my confidence, and I was intimidated before we even started. And the first question was a scenario about what I would do at 2 a.m. in the morning if a mob crowd came. So 200 people came because their friend had been shot. This is the scenario. It had been shot and was inside. So 200 of these people have turned up, and there was a riot about to start at the in the emergency department. And what would I do? And all I could think of, now, this never has happened in all of my ED days, but I know that it has happened in other parts of the hospital. And for me, back in 2015, I'm thinking, holy shit, will this really happen to me? Is this something that I'm going to experience? I've come from a small emergency department. Back then, we would only see probably 100 patients, 150 patients a day. Okay, to a larger emergency department that was seeing upwards of 200 plus, sometimes 300 patients a day. I had all my notes there, and all I could think of was, oh my God, is this really going to happen? And in that moment, I couldn't get my words out. I couldn't express what I was going to say. I knew what to do in that situation. I had it all there, but I was a blubbering mess. I was hot. I was sweaty. I went red in the face, and I was almost going to have a panic attack. And I didn't. I fumbled my way through that job interview. I got the job, mind you. Okay. I think they might have seen pity on me, but once and at one point they said, one of the ladies said to me, she said, Kylie, stop. Take a deep breath. Get your thoughts aligned. And I was able to walk through what I needed to say. But the point was, the energy and the intimidation and the nervous system was so out of alignment that my body went into fight and flight. Okay. And what it was trying to do was to tell me, this is not safe. Stay silent. And it doesn't matter whether you've got 2 years of nursing experience or 30 years of nursing experience, okay? This can happen at any single point in your career and even at home. So once you start to unpack as to why this occurred, then you have insight, and insight gives us quite a lot of information and data points. So let's start is why it happens, because it's certainly not what people tell you or you may think it is. Okay. Yeah, so I will flick down. I've got my laptop here, so I am looking between a couple of screens, and I want to interact with the audience as much as I can. So if you have any questions or you resonate, make sure you pop them in. And yeah, we can have a conversation. So most nurses who struggle to speak up have been told or have told themselves one of these things. I'm not a confident person. I'm too sensitive. I'm not good at communication or confrontation. And so that is the old story, that is the conditioning, and it's wrong. Okay. So many nurses believe that silence equals weakness. So the truth is, your nervous system learnt that silence was often safer than honesty, and it learnt that lesson long before you ever walked onto the ward. So this is not a personality trait. It is an adaptation, and there is a very significant difference between the two. A personality trait is who you are. An adaptation is what you learnt in order to survive your environment. One is fixed, the other can be changed. And you're not born second guessing yourself. Okay, you were conditioned to it. So where did the conditioning actually start? And it's not where you think it did. Okay. So most conversations about nurses losing their voice start at the hospital, with culture, with hierarchies, with systems. This one does not. Think about the era that most of us grew up in, okay? The 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, maybe the 70s. Okay, so more specifically, I'm talking 70s, 80s, and 90s. We had a specific cultural moment with very specific rules for girls. You are not born quiet, okay? Your voice is the second thing that happens when you're born. You breathe, you cry, okay? No child is born quiet. Children, they're loud, they're opinionated, they're gloriously difficult until the environment teaches them not to be, okay? Until society teaches them not to be. And in the 1980s and the 90s and 70s, 80s, and 90s, the environment had very clear instructions. Be a good girl. Children should be seen and not heard. Don't answer back. Don't make a fuss. Don't get too big for your boots. Who remembers that one? Who do you think you are? Okay. Is this all familiar? What else have you been told when you were a child that made you be quiet? And so that they were not cruel phrases back then, or in the mouths of the people who said them. They were just simply the culture script of the era, a transmission of silence that moved through the generations. Now, we do still today, we hear this, not as often as what we used to, but we do hear it because that's what society has conditioned us to say, the environment. Okay. And girls receive it more completely than boys because girls who spoke up were called difficult. Girls who had opinions were called bossy. Bossy boots. And the very qualities that would have been called leadership in a boy were actually a problem in a girl. So let's look at the two columns here. Okay. Same rules, different uniform. On the left, what she is taught at home back in the 70s, 80s, 90s by a culture that had very clear expectations of girls. Okay. Be a good girl teaches compliance and silence and shaping how we respond in adulthood. And on the right is what nursing conditions us for and what you're handed on your first shift. Don't make waves reinforces silence, okay? Ensuring that we conform instead of advocating for ourselves. They're almost identical. She didn't receive a new set of rules when she started nursing. She received confirmation of every rule she's had ever already learnt since childhood. Which is exactly why compliance felt so natural, why the culture felt familiar, why silence already felt like safety before nursing ever asked of it. So you have been practicing this for your whole life. Silence has roots, and understanding those roots is the beginning of changing them. So silence did not create the silence. It deepened it in 3 very specific ways, which we're going to get into. So rule number 1, don't make waves. Compliance is rewarded in nursing culture in ways that are rarely named but constantly communicated. The nurse who stays back without being asked is called a team player. The nurse who takes the extra patient without complaint is called dedicated. The nurse who names the problems gets a reputation. She learned silence keeps you employed, but speaking up costs you. Rule number 2, don't be difficult. Now, this is just not related to the workplace or not related to nursing. This is societal. This is what happens. That happens in schools, universities, all over, wherever you are. And it's a specific kind of social punishment reserved for women who are clear, who say what they mean without apology, who hold a position under pressure. She gets called difficult, aggressive, emotional. Now, that same behavior in a man is called decisive, direct, confident. And so you learn clarity is dangerous, but softening is survival. Rule number 3. And here, this is where tall poppy syndrome comes in as well. Don't outshine the group. Okay. It's also where horizontal violence enters the conversation. And this is one of the most painful to name because the punishment doesn't come from above. It comes from beside her. It comes from your peers, from women who learned the same lessons she did and now unconsciously enforcing them on each other. Gossip, exclusion, the subtle withdrawal of support, the eye-rolling handover. She learnt saying staying small keeps you safe. Visibility is a threat. So your voice was never broken. It became strategic. And the system tried to fix it. It gave her tools, but the tools were never going to be enough. Now, the system is not oblivious to the silence problem. It knows nurses struggle to speak up, and it knows communication does break down under pressure, and it's offered a solution. ISBAR team steps, two challenge rule, assertiveness training workshops in a conference room on a Tuesday afternoon. Now, they're not worthless tools. I want to be clear about that. I am not dismissing them. ISBAR works exceptionally well for what it was designed for. Escalating a deteriorating patient, structuring a clinical handover, communicating clearly across a hierarchy when the information needs to move quickly. But here's what none of the frameworks address. The nurse who already knows what to say and cannot make herself say it. ISBAR gives you a structure. It doesn't give your nervous system permission to use it. So it assumes a barrier is knowing how to communicate. It does not touch why the words will not leave your mouth in the first place. And I want to be clear here, guys. You cannot script your way out of a nervous system that has learned that speaking up is dangerous. No communication framework addresses the silent loop. No assertiveness workshop reaches the fawn response. No two-challenge rule overrides 20 plus years of conditioning. So the actual problem is psychological. It's psychological, it's historical, and it requires a completely different kind of work. The system offered her a better structure for a problem that was never structural. What is the actual problem? Let me show you. But before we get to that, did you know that 90% of nurses report feeling unable to speak up in critical moments, which then leads to frustration and internal conflict during the shifts? 90%. That is crazy. So this is the silence loop. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So something happens, a trigger. And it might be an explicit criticism, an unfair comment, an eye roll, an unsafe situation, or simply an atmosphere in the room that communicates without words that it is not a safe moment to speak. So similar to my job interview, where I walked into the room and the energy and the presence of what was being communicated to me, that it wasn't safe to be in this environment. Okay? So what happens? She learns to stay quiet. Your nervous system has run these calculations thousands of times, and it knows the answer before your conscious mind has even finished forming the thought. The silence produces resentment, okay? You knew what should have been said. You knew you had the words, but you swallowed them again. Okay? And then the resentment erodes confidence because silence starts to feel like evidence that you can't speak up, that you don't have what it takes. And eroded confidence produces more silence. Because if you couldn't speak up last time, why would this time be any different? And so the loop repeats and it repeats. Okay. So you don't have a communication problem. You've got a survival pattern. And survival patterns don't update automatically when the environment changes. The loop just runs on autopilot. It doesn't ask whether the old strategy is still serving you. And here is why the loop is so hard to break. It is not running from choice. It is running from a nervous system that is dysregulated. So you've heard of fight and flight, right? We've been speaking about this the last couple of weeks. Fight and flight, parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Okay. And most of us, we've heard about the freeze response too. But there's a fourth nervous system response that almost nobody talks about. And it is the one that describes most nurses more accurately than any of the other three. And it's called the fawn response. So fawn is what happens when the nervous system decides that the safest way to manage a threat is to appease it, to make the threatening situation comfortable, to agree, to accommodate, to make yourself smaller, quieter, more palatable. In nursing, fawn looks like this: agreeing in the meeting and disagreeing in the car on the way home, taking on the extra shift because saying no felt impossible, even though you're running on empty. Over-explaining a completely reasonable request because you're already managing the other person's potential reaction before they've even had it. Apologizing before you disagree. Laughing at comments that are not funny because confronting them feels too costly. Is this familiar to you? And you're not doing it consciously. Your nervous system is overtaken and it's doing it for you. It's running the ancient calculation: agree and stay safe, disagree and risk the relationship. This is not who you are. It's just how you learn to stay safe. And there is a very significant difference between the two. So fawn is not your personality, it's your protection. And before we talk about what changes this, it's time to go inward and explore what is happening inside our body, because we cannot talk about rebuilding the voice from inside an activated nervous system. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of an exercise here, and I'm going to see if I can stop sharing my screen for a moment. Okay, let's see. Let's see if you have me. And okay, so what I'm going to do is I want you just to take a couple of minutes. We're going to do this exercise. This is a really good exercise to recalibrate yourself. It only takes a couple of minutes. Okay. All right. If you're somewhere where you can, close your eyes. If not, if you're not, just soften your gaze downwards. Okay, and just let the screen sit for itself. Get yourself comfortable in your chair or on the floor. Have your feet flat on the floor if you can, and your back supported. Okay. If it feels comfortable enough, I want you to put a hand on your chest and one on your belly. Okay. And so we're just going to take a couple of moments, and we're going to take a deep breath in through the nose. It's not going to be a performance breath or a big one. And then we're going to slightly let it out longer and slower. Okay. Then we're going to do that 2 more times. We're just going to sit with that for a moment. And while you're sitting there, I want you to bring your attention to your body. Okay. So we're not here to judge what we find, and we're not here to fix anything. We're just here to notice what's happening inside our body in the present moment. What does your jaw feel like? Is it clenched? Is it soft? Okay, what do your shoulders feel like? Are they up here? Are they here? Or are they soft? Is your chest open or tight or closed? Okay. Is your belly tight or constricted? Does it feel like you're bracing for something? What's your lower back feel like? Do you have any pain anywhere? Continue breathing while you're doing this. You're just noticing what's happening. Okay. Women, we hold our pain in our hips and lower back, our traumas in our hips and lower back. So just notice that. What are your thighs and your calves? Are they clenched? Are they relaxed? Okay. And so I want you to just notice that while you're sitting there. Feel what's heavy, not emotionally, just physically. Where does your weight sit in your body right now? Is it in your chest? Is it in your throat, behind your ears, somewhere low in your gut? You get butterflies. Take another deep breath in and just let it out slowly. And as you let it out, let some of that weight go as well. Now you can do this anywhere, okay? Whenever you feel like your nervous system needs regulation. And then slowly just bring yourself back into the room. You can wiggle your fingers and your toes, just wiggle around, just self-adjust. Okay? And when you're ready, open your eyes. So allow yourself just to sit there and reset, creating space for your thoughts and your feelings. And this practice creates clarity and grounding, especially when nursing life is so chaotic. You can do this anywhere. If you've got to go and sit on the toilet and do this, go and do it, okay? You can go for a walk outside on your lunch break, go and do it there. You can do it in the car, okay? You can find a quiet space somewhere or a room that's not being used, just do it. It's fine. And it's not relaxation, okay? So this is different to meditation. This is about regulating. This is the difference. Relaxation asks the nervous system to stop. Regulation teaches the nervous system that it's safe to slow down, that you are safe, that you are held, that you are grounded. And so safety is exactly what your voice has been waiting for. It doesn't need a script or a framework. Evidence, physical, felt, embodied evidence that the current moment is safe enough for you to be honest in. Okay, so we've done that little exercise. Let me share my screen again, and we're going to get into the math. Let me know how. Pop in the comments. Did you do that exercise? Let me know how that felt for you. What came up for you? Okay. Where did you feel it the most? Share it below, and you'll notice that you're not alone in this. Okay. We are back to screen sharing. So how does the voice actually come back? Well, it's not going to take one conversation and not one moment and not one boundary. Okay, it's going to come back in stages. And before I walk you through the stages, let's offer a reframe that'll hold this whole value ladder together, the ladder of voice. Confidence does not create voice. Voice creates confidence. So most people wait until they feel confident enough to speak up. They rehearse the conversation, they write something down, and they just rehearse it and rehearse it. Okay. But confidence is built through speaking, not before it. And every time she moves up a stage and her voice doesn't destroy the relationship or end her career, her nervous system is collecting data points. And data points build confidence in a way that no amount of self-belief alone can ever can. So stage one. Now, this stage one is where a lot of people will avoid, okay? And because it's scary, it's fearful. They're fearful of what they're going to find. They're judging themselves. They're worried that other people are going to judge them. Now, stage one is where you must start, and you have to be honest with yourself. You don't have to voice it. It's internal. Nobody else needs to see this, okay? It means sitting with what you actually feel, not what you think or you've been told that you should feel. What you actually need, not what is being reasonable, not what is reasonable to ask for. And most nurses skip this stage. And then they'll try to go to stage two to communicate better with others while still being dishonest with themselves. Now, when I started doing this work 4 years ago, I avoided stage one for a very, very long time. Okay. Stage one, you are crying like a baby. You're in the fetal position at times. You're getting clarity, but then you're not liking what you're seeing or hearing. So you're judging yourself. But if you can work through stage one, and if you can be honest with yourself, then I tell you what you come and you feel on the other side is calmness. It is a new sense of peace. It is your body just relax. You get to shine. It's almost like magic. When people say to me, Kylie, you are so different. How what's happening? How do you feel? What is carrying? I can't explain it. But the only way I can explain it is to say, I feel at peace. Okay. Because like I said, if you can't be honest with yourself, how can you be honest with other people? Okay. Stage one is the foundation of the work that you do. And it's why this is where we start. And it's why you need someone to hold your hand, to support you and guide you along the way, to keep you accountable. Stage two is started, then we're moving on to being honest with safe people. So we're finding our tribe. Okay. One or two people you generally trust, who you can open up to, who you can explore communication skills. And this is where you start to collect evidence that your honest voice does not destroy a relationship. And this is where it starts to uptake the nervous system. Okay. Starts the recalibration. Stage three is where we start to set small boundaries, a reasonable request, a no that is not accompanied by 3 paragraphs of justification, apologizing before you even ask a sentence or before you even speak. We don't start this stage two with the most difficult person, okay? Because if we do that, well, it's setting us up for failure. So we look at the low stakes first. And in this stage, we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking to collect the data points. Stage 4 is professional advocacy. So this is where ISBAR and clinical communications tools actually become useful. Okay. I think we're lagging a little bit in our communication on Facebook. I'm just going through, and it seems to be a little bit of a lag, and that's okay, Telstra. Anyway, stage 5. Stage 4. So we're talking about the ISBAR and the clinical communication tools. So they're useful in this stage, and not because the structure has fixed the voice problem, but because by stage 4, the nervous system has enough evidence of safety that she can use the structure properly. So the tool is the same one that you were handed years ago. The person holding it is just different. It feels different. And stage 5 is where you can step into confident leadership. And it's not about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the steadiest. The ones whose words carry weight because they are chosen rather than automatic. The one who models honest communication for the nurses around her. Okay. So this is the calm matriarch. Okay. It's stage 5. And you're not at 0. You're at whatever stage you're at. And every stage has a next one that builds on it. So your voice is not missing. It's just waiting. Okay. I want to tell you what it is exactly waiting for. It's waiting for evidence that it's finally safe to come back. Your voice went quiet because quiet was strategic. Okay. Because your nervous system made a very reasonable decision based on the information available at the time. The work of rebuilding your voice is not the work of becoming louder. It is the work of teaching your nervous system that it's finally safe to be honest. That safety doesn't arrive all at once. It's built in stages, small evidence communicated, proof that honesty doesn't always cost what it once did. So you weren't born second guessing yourself. You've been conditioned to it. It just takes a little while for that conditioning to be undone. And kindness and compliance are not the same thing. Clinical excellence Clinical excellence without self-leadership eventually becomes self-abandonment. We spoke about this last week. And so your voice has been patiently waiting for you. And maybe today's the day she finally gets to come home. So insight doesn't change the patterns, practice does. So you know what happened, where the silence started, how the loop runs, what the fawn response looked like on the outside. And I've given you the map. But knowing the ladder exists is not the same as climbing it. You cannot think your way out of stage 1 to 5. And you cannot watch enough Thursday Morning Lies and just arrive. You have to do the work. It requires structure, support, a community of women doing it alongside you, accountability that makes a difference between insight and actual shift. And this is what the Real Shift group's built for. Okay? And so the Real Shift group is about rebuilding the things that the system and society has taken from you: confidence, boundaries, and health. And we've been living inside of all these for the last, all of these conversations across the series. Your nervous system, the identity work, your voice and self-advocacy work, okay? And the group is where that understanding becomes practice and where recognition becomes change. And we're knowing where the pattern becomes or the pattern started, and then choosing a different one. And so this is exactly why I created the Real Shift Beyond the Bedside 6-week program. Okay. So it's not just any other program that you invest in and have your 6 weeks, turn up weekly to a masterclass, then walk away and maybe implement 20, 30% of it. Okay. It is a guided journey for nurses who are ready to stop surviving and start leading themselves differently. And so together we'll rebuild what years and years of caring for everybody else slowly eroded. Your confidence, your voice, your boundaries, your nervous system, your relationship with yourself. And you're surrounded by women who understand your world because they're living it too. Okay? Women who are no longer willing to accept exhaustion as the price of being a good nurse. And this is where awareness becomes action, where insight becomes lasting change, and where the survival nurse begins to become the calm matriarch. So it begins on August 6th, okay? And it's almost, I say it's 6 weeks, but it's almost it'll be 7 weeks, because every single person that starts, you get a private 60-minute one-on-one onboarding session with me. Okay, so at this session, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to sit down, we're going to have a cup of coffee, and we're going to find out where you are currently. What is working well in your life? What is not working well? What are your goals? What would you like to achieve? What are your dreams? We get to do that in this session. And why do we do this session? It's so that you can turn up and you can feel clear, supported, and ready. Now, in this beta hawk cohort, I am only taking 6 ladies, okay? And I'm keeping it small so that I can work with everyone. I want you to be seen, heard, and coached personally. And if you've been waiting for permission to choose yourself, this is it. So if nothing changes, okay, let me ask you this question and pop it in the chat, okay? If nothing changes, you don't do anything, if you continue to go through the motions, where will you be this time next year? Will you be still saying, I'll look after myself when things settle down, when the kids grow up, when I retire, when the workload gets less, when I have more time for myself? Will you keep making excuses? Or will you finally become the woman you've been quietly longing for? The choice is yours. Okay. And if your heart has been saying, this is exactly what I need, if your heart has been telling you it's time to put you first, then I'd love to welcome you into the real shift. What else? Like I said, we're going to rebuild your confidence. We're going to look at self-trust. We're going to rebuild the nervous system. We're going to look at emotional steadiness of the profession and of your life. We're going to learn how we can set boundaries, how we can protect our energy, how we stop abandoning ourselves to keep everybody else everybody else comfortable. And then we're going to look at health. Okay. And why do we look at health? Because many nurses, we do not put our health first. Our health is last. We have been conditioned to put everybody else's needs first. So we're going to look at depression. We're going to look at anxiety. We're going to look at gut health. Okay. We're going to look at skin health. We're going to look at if we have any comorbidities, if we have hypertension, diabetes, autoimmune, and how that affects us. Okay. And then we're going to start looking at ways that we can implement small holistic strategies to recalibrate the nervous system, okay, and get us out of survival mode. Because once we start changing those three pillars, everything else changes. So like I said, you get a 60-minute private onboarding session, 6 live coaching sessions, somatic practices, breathwork, guided journaling, community. Okay, everyone gets an inner circle community. You get all the call recordings, lifetime access to all the call recordings. Okay, so you can revisit all of that time and time and time again. Plus lots of bonuses. We're going to weekly inner voice scans. So did you know that your voice carries a musical note? Okay. And that musical note can correlate to what frequencies are out of alignment in our body, and how music can help us to recalibrate the frequency fields in our body. So very, very powerful. So you get that every week. Everyone is going to be sent a commencement package, a self-care commencement package from me. Okay, so lots and lots of bonuses. And I know you're probably asking how much is the investment. So I'm going to get to that in a minute. But before we get to that, what does staying the same already cost you? Write that question down and just sit with it today and over the next couple of days. And then while you're sitting with that, I want you to imagine yourself in 6 weeks from today. You're sleeping better. You can say no without guilt. You can leave work at work. You're starting to trust yourself again. You're feeling like yourself. You're finding joy and happiness. Little things like the sun shining and the warmth on your face feels joyful. You have gratitude for your life again. You're not going through the motions. So the investment, okay, this is the first and only time I am offering it at this price. After this cohort and after this section, it's increasing to $1,997. Okay, so for this cohort and the first 6 people, we are at $997, well below the value. We're starting on August 6th. This is the founder's price. There's a payment plan. I would love to welcome you into the group. And I want to leave you with this, okay? You didn't become a nurse to lose yourself. So you don't have to find your way back alone. click on the QR code. Mariah is going to put the link in the comments as well to make it easier for you to purchase. And if you have any questions, if you're not quite sure whether this program's for you, I invite you to book a free clarity call as well. So Mariah will put that link in the comments as well. And let's have a 30-minute conversation, okay? And let's see what is the best fit for you. And I want to leave it with you. That is the end of episode 5 of The Real Shift. Thank you for joining with us and being honest with what you're experiencing. And know that you are not alone. Okay, join us next week for episode 6. And don't forget, if you know someone who would benefit from this work, invite them to join the Empowered Nurse Collective. The more people we have and the more nurses, the more that we can make a difference in the world. I am going to leave you guys with that, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.